The next country I want to talk about is France, and I'm just gonna start by reading right out of the book, which says France is another controversial geopolitical entity. In many ways, French history was of an Atlanticist character, opposed to the continental and Central European trends. France was the main historical enemy of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, in every possible way supported the fragmented state of the German principalities, gravitating towards progressivism and centralism of an anti-traditional and unnatural type. In general, from the point of view of undermining the European continental tradition, France has always been at the forefront, and in many cases, French policy has been identified with the most aggressive Atlanticism. At least this was the case until the United States assumed the planetary function as the main pole of Atlanticism. In France, there's also an alternative geopolitical trend that goes back to the continental lines of Napoleon. Anyways, let me get to the important part, right? The territory of France is a necessary component of the Eurasian bloc in the West, since control over the Atlantic coast directly depends on this. It's the most important course. A Franco-German alliance is the main link in Eurasian geopolitics in the continental West, provided that the interests of Central Europe, namely its autarky and geopolitical independence, will be priority here. I'm going to just skip to it and explain what it means, okay? So their goal is basically to divide them from the UK, right, like through Brexit. And they want to make France and Germany kind of become the leaders of Europe on their own. And you can see that it's definitely now, what's interesting is what they want to do is promote nationalism, right? So if you don't know, in 2022 there's a French presidential election, and recently Macron, right, if you know about Macron, this guy, recently he's been changing a lot. He's been more nationalist, more anti-Islam. Why? Because he wants to counter the growth of the right-wing nationalist party, which is led by this woman, Le Pen. And he said, look, if I adopt some of her views, then people will be like, okay, you know what, we can go with this guy. He has a little bit of both, you know what I mean? So he's just trying to win the election. He don't really care. He don't have real principles. He's going to change his principles based on what he thinks will get him elected. And so, Putin, it's well known that she takes money from Russians who's funding the far right, so it's very clear, right? So their goal is to get her to be president and become a nationalist, and nationalism is inherently divisive, right? So they want them to kind of divide Europe through that, divide the EU, right? And so, although it says here that he seems to say, oh, we want them to work with Germany and blah, 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 I think they would definitely accept. I mean, look, you have to understand the goal of the writer who wrote this book. He wanted the type of kind of a fantasy, a Eurasian, united, like religious thing. That's not really, I don't think Russian cares about that, but they definitely use the strategies in it. They don't care about the goal of the book. The goal of the book is kind of something of a fantasy. Putin is not religious. He don't care about no fantasies. He just sees this as useful strategies. So whatever strategy he can use from the extract from this book and implement it to divide parts of Europe, then he'll be happy with that. And so, yeah, you see here, their goal is to, I'll go into Germany next, but as you can see, their goal with France is they're hoping Marine Le Pen wins the election as a more nationalist person, dividing Europe. You do see some cooperation, military cooperation between Germany and France. It's not exclusive, but it's possible that they develop their own military bloc led by them, which includes the other nations of Europe. And hopefully for Russia, they're hoping it excludes the UK. But for now, the UK seems to be involved in these, military exercises, right? But yeah, and that's it for France for now.